Whatto chaps, I'm MagicalMike and this is a warrior SPvP build that I like to run at the moment, that I also like to call the Whatto Chops, or if you want a better name, Eviscerate redone or something like that. It all goes back to basically beta, where Eviscerate used to be king and it was the scariest thing in the world and oh my god, Eviscerate, how do you dodge it? So yeah. It's basically the meta currently, but without the hammer, so it's almost as effective, but not quite. It's better in some cases, but not in others. It's got more sustained DPS, I would say, but it doesn't have the control that the hammer brings. So you can use it to duel people, although the hammer is probably slightly better, and you can also use it in team fights as well, because it's got a lot of utility in that respect too. So the build itself, you should be seeing examples in the background as well while I explain this stuff. It's a Marauder amulet build. You could go Berserker if you want, if you were like Rom from Orange Logo for example, but I'm not that insane, so I'd quite like the extra 5k health that the Marauder amulet gives me. The rune I didn't give too much thought into. Hallbrack seems to work because of the might duration and the condition duration reduction. That's nice too. So you know, you could probably use strength again if you're mental, but I wouldn't advise it. Weapons are greatsword and axe shield, of course. I have tried hammer in place of greatsword, I've tried sword in place of shield, I've tried mace in place of shield, I've tried all different combinations of these things, but honestly, this current combination seems to work the best right now. I will say that sword offhand does have a nice block, and rip, which is the second skill on skill 4, is actually quite powerful, but you forgo the shield bash, which is really important in this build. Sigils you want probably hydromancy and doom somewhere, I don't know where exactly, and intelligence is really important for the shield axe, and I went with energy as well because I wanted a little bit more defense, but I guess you could play with these. I don't know, I'd maybe say you could go with the sigil of venom. No, I'm joking there. Don't use that. Specializations. Okay, we want strength, defense, and discipline. Defense is simply for what it says on the tin. Defense. We want defense because we want cleansing ire. Conditions are going to murderize this build, so you want to take cleansing ire as your grandmaster trait in defense because it's going to help with getting rid of those conditions. You also probably want defy pain and shieldmaster. Shieldmaster is fairly self-explanatory. You'll see in the footage at some point that I reflect a bunch of attacks from a ranger and start out the fight with him at half health simply because he was reflecting his own attacks onto me. Powerful trait this if used in the right situation. You can also use it to get a lot of might, which is surprisingly powerful as well. You also get some other very basic minor stuff from this trait line, which is okay, but nothing worth mentioning. Strength. We have Reckless Dodge as our first minor, which is worth mentioning because the damage on this is actually quite significant. I've crit up to 2k with a few stacks of might on me on this, so just dodging into somebody can break an Aegis, break a random block, it can remove blind, I think it can remove blind, don't take my word for that, and it can also do quite a bit of damage if you're using it as part of your combo, and swapping into Greatsword procs the Hydromancy sigil and also does about 1000 damage or so. Powerful stuff. So, peak performance is going to reduce the recharge on Rampage, which is our elite skill. Self-explanatory, Rampage is really powerful. You could also use War Banner or the Signet, but honestly Rampage is just really powerful, and this skill helps in that respect. And honestly these are the two not really worth talking about. Forceful Greatsword is our master trait, obviously, because we want to get a whole lot of might from attacking with Greatsword, and that'll give us reduced cooldowns on Whirlwind Attack and Rush, which are also very powerful skills. We also get 10% increased flat damage from Sticker Move, which is also pretty nice, so keep dodging and keeping that up. And the most important trait here is Berserker's Power. If you're using this as often as you can at max adrenaline, you're going to have 20% increased damage. This is a powerful trait for obvious reasons, so you want to keep pumping out Eviscerates and Arcing Slices as often as possible. On to Discipline now. Adrenaline on weapon swap is actually very useful, because you'll be swapping every 5 to 7 seconds or so if you're playing as best as you can, and this is going to give you a chunk of adrenaline. I think it's about half a bar, 5 adrenaline. Still, that's half a bar every 5 to 7 seconds. That's going to help keeping up with Berserker's powers timer. Then you want Warrior's Sprint, which is going to help with all those pesky immobilizes. It's going to ensure that your combo later on comes off very well, and only blind and dodges are going to mess with that. So that's pretty good, and it'll keep you mobile as well. Fast Hands, obviously, the most amazing trait in the entire game. Like, I wish other classes could do something like this, but this is the reason I play Warrior, because I can actually swap weapons all the time and it's awesome. Brawler's Recovery, combined with Fast Hands, this is really powerful, and you'll notice it only has a 4-second cooldown, which means it's always gonna be up. So if you have a condition on you, like, oh I don't know, say you're coming up against a Burn Guardian that has somehow managed to stack 13 burns on you, well you just swap weapons and then it's not there anymore. Not a problem. Burn Guardians, absolutely pushovers with this trait, and many other skills too. You can also swap weapons when you're feared, for example, I think. I'm pretty sure you can. Again, don't take my word for it, I'm not the best at PvP, and I may not have noticed that properly, but swapping weapons while feared will actually break the fear if it's the only condition on you. Of course, if the Necro's good, or if a Warrior's good and still using Fear Me, then you probably won't break the fear because you'll have vulnerability or bleeds or stuff on you. Hopefully you'll get lucky, but well, you know, gotta roll the dice. Anyway, Brawler's Recovery, very very powerful trait, seeing as you'll be swapping weapons all the time and removing conditions. Versatile power is Might on weapon swap and recharging faster recharging burst skills, which is very good for Arcing Slice and Eviscerate. Hopefully I'll let you spam those more and more often, which is always pretty handy. And 2 stacks of Might's nothing to shake a stick at. And the last trait, if you're running Hammer, take Merciless Hammer, I guess, but honestly, Heightened Focus is just too good to give up. That quickness, if you just look at the numbers on screen, like that amount of quickness on that low of a cooldown is so powerful. It will let you murderize somebody with your dual Defy Pains, Endure Pains, whatever it's called in this game, jeez. You can turn a fight around so quickly with 10 seconds of invulnerability and sudden bursts of quickness that you will come out of a losing fight on top just out of sheer force of will alone, which is pretty nice. And it'll also let you cleave down corpses better, which is what 100 Blades is for most of the time. So the skills that you want to take with this build are not locked in, but honestly I think these are the best. Balanced Stance, Endure Pain, Berserker Stance and Rampage, because of peak performance up here. These are pretty good skills. Rampage, obviously the stability is going to be really handy in a lot of situations, as a stun break, as a safe stomp, as just helping you get away from stuff, and in a very weird pinch you get swiftness from it, which isn't what you're really going to use the skill for. Endure Pain is, again, it's a stun break, but you're not really going to use it as a stun break, you're going to use it for that 4 seconds of invulnerability. Well, conditions are still going to be a problem, but you'll hopefully deal with those with Berserker Stance, or in your trait line Cleansing Ire. You should hopefully be dealing with those quite nicely. The only major condition that is a problem with this build is going to be blind, so if you're coming up against a thief that spams blind and just about nothing else, then you can always pop Healing Signet for immunity to blind, or Berserker Stance if you've still got that too. But you know, Healing Signet gives you the resistance. Another good use for this would be stomping a Necro, for example, because it's on a much shorter cooldown than Berserker Stance. So if you know you're just gonna stomp a Necro, then you can pop Healing Signet and he won't be able to fear you, and you got a safe stomp on him. Pretty nice. So the way I like to play the build is mostly mobility and focusing on the squishiest target possible and getting him dead. Getting him out of the fight, removing him, getting from point to point, with things like Rush and Whirlwind Attack, and basically just pressuring people down as much as possible. Greatsword autos are going to give you a lot of might. Your shield block on Axe Shield is going to give you a lot of might if you, say, run in and out of a ring of fire or something like that, although not advisable because burning hurts. And just build up your might. Whirlwind Attack through people, part of your combo. And Rush is going to do a whole heap of damage. I've seen this crit for up to 6k, I think, in some points, and it will also move you way across the middle of Fofire's point, all the way up to some mesmer that just doesn't see you coming because you were miles away from him, and suddenly, bam, he's eaten a 5k crit to the face, and suddenly he's down, removing him from the fight, or forcing him to play defensive, which is pretty fun to do. So, greatsword skills are fairly self-explanatory. 100 Blades is really going to be used mostly for denying stomps on people. If you use it on a friendly corpse while people are reviving it, you will often prevent people from going anywhere near you because they don't want to take that damage. Say a thief, for example, won't particularly want to go for a stomp if you're stood there doing 5, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 damage on him, so he'll probably avoid that. You can also use it to prevent people from rezzing their allies too, so if you just sit there on top of a corpse using 100 Blades, people will either sit in it and give you a ton of might and do a ton of damage to their enemy team, or they will just not go and res, which is usually the thing that happens. Either way, that's a good outcome for you, because you're going to be stomping or killing those people pretty nice with this. The combo that you want, obviously, is to hit them with a bunch of stuff, and then immediately when you've got a decent amount of adrenaline, ideally 3 bars, but 2 bars is usually good enough too, swapping to your axe and shield, immediately hitting shield bash, which will remove immobilize, I should say, and hopefully stun them, and then immediately eviscerate, which will crit because of your intelligence sigil, and it crits for a lot of damage too, hopefully bringing them down below half health, and then you can finish them off with some axe auto attacks, hence the chop, double, triple chop. That's where the name of the build comes from. Again, fairly self-explanatory. I avoid using Cyclone Axe as much as possible, but honestly, it's just a habit of mine to hit skill 2. It isn't a lot of damage, so you probably want to stop doing that. And Throw Axe is nice to just cripple people and keep them from getting to you or getting away from you in those specific situations where you need that. So yeah, that's the build. It's very, very close to what the current meta is, but if you're bored of playing Hammer, then go ahead and use this build. It's fairly old school, and people will dodge Eviscerate quite often, but they will often not dodge Arcing Slice, which is another thing to mention. You don't always have to crit, you don't always have to go for that combo on Eviscerate. You can instead swap to Axe, just throw out some auto attacks, people will just regularly dodge when they see you swap to Axe, and then just as your weapon swap is coming off cooldown, you can try and hit with a shield bash, swap to greatsword, and then deliver a good arcing slice. Also, other things to watch out for are things like immobilizers that people might be throwing out. If someone throws out an immobilize and you see that they're not cleansing that immobilize, 100 Blades will come into its own and do a whole heap of damage there too. Again, a lot of just things you gotta watch out for. Just generic PvP stuff. Alright, that's the build. If you enjoyed this video, then thank you very much. Either way, if you didn't, thanks for watching anyway. So, yeah. I've been MagicalMike, this has been a warrior video, and I will see you next time.